Good evening is rising on Donald Trump. On Friday, first son-in-law, he gets locked out of seeing anything top secret. Yesterday, close aide Hope Hicks admitted she tells white lies for the president. Today, she announced she's quitting. Meanwhile, special counsel Robert Mueller's drilling down on Trump's Russia business dealings and what he may have known in advance about the Russian hacking into the Democrats' email, knowledge that could make him a co-conspirator. And now new heat on Trump and guns. With the students heading for Washington, can he still get away with doing nothing? First, NBC has confirmed the incredible news that White House Communications Director Hope Hicks, someone who's been with Donald Trump since the early days of his campaigning, is leaving. The timing certainly raises questions. Just yesterday, Hicks testified for 8 hours before the House Intelligence Committee about Russia. According to the New York Times, she made an astounding admission, especially for a communications director for the White House. According to the New York Times, she told House investigators that her work for President Trump had occasionally required her to tell white lies. Required her. Earlier this month, there were reports Hicks was involved in drafting early statements of support for Rob Porter, the White House aide who stepped down after reports emerged he abused his ex-wives, 2 of them. Hicks was reportedly dating Porter at the time of drafting that report. At the time, anyway, the president is frustrated, according to the reporting, over her handling of the Porter controversy. And for more, I'm joined by the New York Times' Peter Baker, the Washington Post's Robert Costa, and Mika Yaoyang, Vice President for the National Security Program at Third Way. Thank you all. I start with Peter. Peter, this leaving, there was tears at the White House today. There was shock. The day after she made that amazing admission of white lies, which didn't shock anybody, but her leaving did. How do you put it together?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. We don't really know how the time works. She told people before yesterday's session that she had been thinking about this, so it's not directly tied to it.
Well, everybody's thinking about it. Why did she walk out the very day after making this astounding admission of telling lies for the president?
Yeah, I know. I agree. That's certainly going to raise questions. If you wanted to manage the exit, you wouldn't want it to be connected to that same news cycle, right? Because people would ask the very obvious question: is one related to the other? She told people that, look, there's never a good time to leave. There's no point in trying to manage it too much because this news cycle is constantly churning. Something would come up if it wasn't that. But you're right. Obviously, she's raised questions about her credibility, her conduct with the press. Now, look, she's got a lot of respect among other people in the White House and among reporters. But you're right. The notion that you would use that phrase, white lies, even if it's meant to be innocuous for a communications director, raises a lot of questions, and the questions that she hasn't answered in a public setting that people can see.
Robert, he's up to his elbows in alligators right now. He's got Mueller coming at him for his. He's back at war with Attorney General Jeff Sessions. He called Sessions disgraceful today. His own Attorney General, after the Attorney General opened an investigation into surveillance abuse, and now Sessions is hitting back. Finally, let me finish tonight with Trump Watch. He won't like this one. This is Hardball, where the action is.
From the Trump campaign, who actually remain in the White House tonight, are Jared Kushner, who, of course, was stripped of his top secret security clearance yesterday, Ivanka Trump, and Dan Scavino, who works with the president on social media. Hicks is at the center of 3 controversies that have rocked the White House, 2 of which are core to the Russia investigation. She was reportedly with the president the weekend he decided to fire then FBI Director Jim Comey. She was involved in writing the Donald Trump Jr. statement about the Trump Tower meeting with Russians. And just weeks ago, she was crucial in drafting the White House statement defending Rob Porter, a man whom she was dating seriously. Porter, of course, is the former White House top aide accused of abusing 2 ex-wives and a former girlfriend. Hope Hicks is the 3rd communications director to leave the White House. To date, 1 in 3 Trump administration officials have left. 1 in 3. That is in just the first year of the Trump administration, according to a study tracking this. Jeff Zeleny begins our coverage out front live at the White House. Jeff, it's a stunning development. There is no one more important to the president emotionally who was there every step of the way, his emotional crutch, as it was described to me. What are you learning about Hope Hicks' stunning departure?
Well, Aaron, there's no question that we have stood here several times over the last 13 months and talked about a resignation, a departure. This one is different. Hope Hicks was not a political expert, but she was a Donald Trump expert. She worked for him longer than virtually anyone else on staff. She joined right before he decided to announce for president and was along with him and along the entire way, and sat just steps outside the Oval Office. She saw everything he did. She played a major role here. So this is coming across as a major bombshell. People across the West Wing were surprised. People were crying. They were upset. In fact, when she held a meeting with a few small staffers who report to her, she was crying and upset because she wants to pursue other opportunities. But, Aaron, there are many questions tonight. Why? Why is the timing of this right now? Is it related to her testimony on Capitol Hill? Unclear, but the timing certainly is what it is. Is it related to her hours and hours over a couple days of testimony in December to Bob Mueller's special counsel team? Unclear, but that certainly also played a role into this pressure cooker situation. But it is that Rob Porter resignation a few weeks ago that the president became angry at her, at least questioning her judgment for one of the first times. We do not know if her resignation is related to that either. She said she does want to pursue other opportunities. But, Aaron, the question here going forward is that many advisors say, how will the president get along without her? He calls out the name Hope for so many things. Her voice was quiet on the outside. We never saw her on Sunday shows, but inside this White House, it was loud and clear. And in the coming weeks, Aaron, in a few weeks when she leaves, that voice will no longer be here. Aaron.
All right, thank you very much, Jeff Zeleny. And obviously, it's a big loss for this president. You know, a person who relies on individuals, and this individual perhaps more than any other, whatever her role was, helping him with a tweet, being there when he just needed someone to talk to. She was that person, and that is going to be a void. Now, our senior political analyst, Mark Preston, joins us, White House correspondent for American Urban Radio Network's April Ryan here, and the former director of the Nixon Presidential Library, Tim Naftali, here with me in New York. Tim, she was with him from the beginning, and, you know, at times interviewing him when he was a candidate, she was always there. Any meeting he would have with the press, she was always there. Anytime in his office, she was always there. You know, as this source told me, she was his last emotional crutch. How big is this?
Well, you know, all presidencies have changed, okay? And the team that starts with a president might not be the same team that's with that president 3 years into the first term.
Yep.
But what we're seeing is a dramatic churning of the inner circle. And given that President Trump is among the more conspiratorially minded presidents we've had, loyalty matters more for him than for most presidents. So this must be a very emotional event for him. This, coupled with the fact that he can't talk to Jared Kushner anymore about elements. But remember that we have a president who doesn't want the details. He doesn't want to sit and read that material. He doesn't have a loyalist who can give him that material. I believe the president should feel a little at sea as a result of Hope Hicks's resignation. And we don't even know, you know, if it's because he pushed her out by mistake, then he's also got to worry now that she's not going to be completely loyal later on as she gets asked some very tough questions by the Mueller investigation.
And these are the crucial questions, April. I mean, you know, as Jeff Zeleny was pointing out, right, she's testified to Mueller. There was the whole imbroglio with Rob Porter and her involvement in handling that situation. And then yesterday, of course, the 9 hours of testimony with the House Intelligence Committee where she admitted to telling lies for the president, which is very significant. Some of the headlines there. And, you know, one of the, you know, a source telling me that the president berated her last night. That was his response. It wasn't, we'll get through this together, hope you did a good job. It was, how could you be so stupid as to say that you had ever lied for me? I mean, what are you hearing about the timing and the reason here, April?
Well, what I'm hearing from my sources is that the timing is real. I mean, what happened yesterday just further put the nail in the coffin for her. You know, I understand that, you know, during the time when she wrote the statement about her then boyfriend, Rob Porter, General Kelly was very upset. And there's been tension between both. And this just totally sealed it. And she had, now this is what I'm being told from some sources, that she had given a tentative resignation at that time around the Rob Porter statement. But after this, what happened yesterday with the white lie, they were like, it's time. And even though you've heard from a statement from Sarah Huckabee Sanders, also you heard from one from General Kelly, there's still tension about this. There's still a very big upset. And the president's back is against the wall with this Russia situation. And that's one of the reasons why we see him not wanting this investigation to continue and thinking about cutting the Mueller investigation off. And this, once again, just puts another nail in that coffin, and that's something he doesn't want. So What I'm hearing is that she may have given a resignation, but it was a forced resignation.
And, you know, Mark Preston, here's the thing, I think, as Tim's pointing out, the president now alone in a way he has not been. He is a person, you know, just even from covering him and knowing him for the more than a decade that I have, he needs a person around him at all times. That person that he's going to call out their name and they're there. And that person, by the way, has always been a woman. And now she's gone, right? It wasn't always hope, but it's hope now. And now she's gone. I mean, how significant is this moment for the president?
I think it's very significant, but it's not just for the president. It's for the country, and quite frankly, it's for our diplomatic relations with other countries. Hope Hicks has been really the blanket for Donald Trump. You know, the thing that he could grasp onto and feel comfort from, that he knew was loyal. Look, when you come to Washington and become the president of the United States, you get a lot of friends. Everybody wants to be your friend. They want to be there. They want to offer you advice. But you don't get a whole lot of loyal friends. Those are the folks that you have been with most of your career, folks who might have been with you in previous lives, folks that you can trust and rely on, that want to be near you because they like you, not because they like the power that you have. And it is concerning. And to add to that, we also saw the Deputy Communications Director, Josh Rafael, decide that he is leaving as well. He is somebody else who's also very close to the family. So this really was a 1-2 punch right now to the Trump family. And what we know from President Trump's habits is that he goes upstairs to the private residence, he gets on his phone, he watches cable television, he starts to tweet out, you know, he does his things. What he's not going to have, though, he's not going to have, when he goes downstairs to the Oval Office, he's not going to have that familiar face that he can trust, that he likes, that he feels comfortable with anymore. And
Tim, what does that mean? When you talk about, you know, how he can be conspiracy theory minded, you know, one person was telling me now there's nothing from stopping him from being a madman, a person who knows the president. You know, obviously, perhaps using the word lightly, but perhaps not. I mean, when we saw that sheet of paper the other day, when he was listening to the families and students from the high school shooting, at the end it was, "I hear you." And he was, of course, roundly criticized, and anyone would need to hand him that. But the reason I'm pointing it out is Hope Hicks is the one who wrote that. She's the one who gave him that.
Well, I mean, every president brings their own mafia with them. They're called the mafia, whether it's the Boston Mafia, the Georgia Mafia. And these are the people, as Mark was saying, that they trust. And as presidents get more comfortable, they don't need that team as much. Richard Nixon, for example, needed that team, and it was a tremendous blow when he had to push out his closest aides. In fact, he told his speechwriter that he was considering, believe it or not, suicide. This is 1973. So it depends. Different presidents have different emotional needs, but they all seem to need this group of loyalists. This is a president who's losing them all before the second year is done. We should expect, I'm afraid, more ranting, more misbehavior, more acting out, unless Kelly and he have formed some kind of bond. What's most interesting here is he's allowed Kelly to push his son-in-law out. We'll see, though.
Well, right. And now, April, what is the reaction inside the White House? You know, a White House, which, let's just be honest, leaks like a sieve and almost always negatively about other people in the White House. But Hope Hicks was someone, you know, there hadn't been leaks that seemed to be very well liked by a lot of people. What's the reaction inside the White House and the perception of the boss when he is losing someone as important as she was to him?
Well, there are people who can step into that role, and one person that we haven't talked about, Kellyanne Conway. I know when the president has gotten in trouble on Twitter, she's gone to him and said, "Sir, how can I help you?" Instead of saying, "You should have done it this way," she'll step in, "Sir, how can I help you?" Or talk to him that way, you know, "How can I help?" And he leans on her somewhat. They talk. So I believe she may play a bigger role in that piece. But when we look at what is happening, how they're reacting, we saw it today. They canceled the press briefing. And there was a fear that someone could have gotten a little bit of inkling or a leak of what was happening. They didn't want to step on this listening session for guns. Right. So that's one of the reasons why they canceled the briefing today. So a lot of this is strategic. And they did not want this to get out until they wanted it out. They wanted to put out the gun issue for the president to make his statements and then for this to come out.
Right. They wanted him to have his moment, which is what he wanted, and not to be overshadowed by Hope Hicks, which, of course, has obviously completely happened. Mark.
Listen, this is a tough day. This is a very tough day right now for President Trump. And as Tim and April and yourself and I are just kind of ruminating about what's going to happen, I think there is great concern because Donald Trump is not a product of Washington. He doesn't have allies in town. He wasn't a former senator. He wasn't a former governor where he was surrounded by people that believed in him necessarily and came with him here. He's surrounded himself by people right now that are folks who have either made their career in politics or folks who have tried to make their career in politics and saw this as a golden opportunity to go to the White House. He is in, I think, a lot of trouble. And as Tim said, we're going to see a lot of ranting and perhaps behavior that could top what we've seen so far.
All right. Thank you all very much.
As our breaking What's new?
Well, I guess that's the case. If she was the last thing between him and that, then, you know, it was a thin barrier indeed. But nonetheless, such that it was. Wisp of a barrier, it's gone. Who will follow Hope Hicks out the door? One of the crucial questions this hour. Trump not happy, we're now hearing, with his chief of staff, John Kelly, either. Plus, the attorney general for the first time fighting back against President Trump. What made Jeff Sessions snap and stand up for himself? And Trump shutting down his own party over guns. What's his endgame?
Aaron Burnett out front. Brought to you by Otesla. Learn more at Otesla.com.
They won't be selling firearms or ammunition to anyone under the age of 21. A statement we just received saying, quote, in light of recent events, we've taken an opportunity to review our policy on firearm sales. Going forward, we are raising the age restriction for purchase of firearms and ammunition to 21 years of age. This more welcome news to the people of Stoneman Douglas, students, teachers, and parents of victims who have been advocating for changes to our gun laws. And this news coming tonight after the announcement this morning by Dick's Sporting Goods, the largest sporting goods retailer in the country, that they too are going to raise the age limit to buy firearms in their store to 21, and they're going to stop selling assault-style rifles like the one the killer used at this high school. They're also saying they won't be selling high-capacity magazines anymore or any accessories for weapons similar to the AR-15. The CEO of Dick's Sporting Goods saying that he knows they will take criticism from gun rights activists, and this will be a hit to their bottom line, but he said he and the leadership of his company, they were moved by the efforts and the passion they've seen from the survivors here in Parkland. Wolf.
Kaylee, the Stoneman Douglas High School reopened today exactly 2 weeks after the shooting. What was it like?
It was an emotional roller coaster of a day, Wolf, as described to me by students and teachers here. The school day began with a moment of silence, 17 seconds, one for each of the victims. Students and teachers experienced this moment as they gathered with the class they were in when the gunman attacked. And this day, as the principal said, the focus was going to be on comfort, not curriculum. That's the case for many days moving forward. Students weren't even allowed to bring backpacks onto campus. And as one student told me, he realized today he had been so wrapped up in fighting for changes to gun laws over the past 2 weeks that today it was as if reality slapped him in the face when he saw an empty desk in one of his classrooms next to him.
All right, Kaylee, thank you very much. Kaylee Hartung reporting. That's it for me. Aaron Burnett out front starts right now.
Out front next, breaking news, White House in turmoil. Hope Hicks, the White House communications director.
Told a Republican senator, quote, you're afraid of the NRA. You know, Rebecca Berg, he's getting some negative feedback from a lot of conservatives. Breitbart, take a look at Breitbart's main page right now. Trump, the gun grabber, Seeds Dems wish list, bump stocks, buying age, assault weapons, background checks, tells Steve Scalise, the majority whip in the House, to take a hike after surviving assassination attempt, bashes NRA. He's getting some grief for taking the positions during that hour-plus meeting with bipartisan lawmakers.
And it's hard to blame Republicans and conservatives, Wolf, for being a little shocked at what the president had to say today, because he ran as a Second Amendment conservative, even though previously, before his presidential campaign, he wasn't that at all. He was actually pro further gun restrictions before that, but he ran as a pro-Second Amendment conservative. The NRA endorsed his campaign and has supported him as president, and they spent millions of dollars trying to get him elected. So it would have made sense for Donald Trump to listen to the NRA, to listen to what Republicans want on this issue. Instead, he flipped completely. Now, we've seen him do that before with immigration, with other issues in meetings like this. But you could see the body language from Republicans in that room, like John Cornyn sitting to the president's right. His face just fell as the president was expressing his support for some of these measures. And Dianne Feinstein sitting to the president's left was absolutely giddy hearing him say this.
It was so shocking when, you know, people were talking about background checks, and then the notion of concealed carry was raised because
by Steve Scalise.
By Steve Scalise, because people have always thought, okay, you can do enhanced background checks if you give the Republicans concealed carry on weapons, and the
nationwide.
Nationwide, and the president said, nah. That's got to be in a separate bill. We're not going to do that. It'll slow it down. And you could just see the Republicans in the room saying, oh, my God, what's next? Well, what was next was assault weapons and Dianne Feinstein's joy. Now, the issue here is, of course, we went through this when they had the reality show on DACA. And so and nothing has come of that. So today we had the reality show on gun control where the president kept pushing for comprehensive reform. We now all have to take all of this with a grain of salt.
And he also said, go ahead, confiscate the guns and worry about due process later if someone is mentally ill.
The president identifies a problem like this. You have conservatives on one side pushing a solution like gun violence restraining orders. Democrats want to solve it upstream with something like, let's make it harder for people to get guns in the first place. The president doesn't realize that he's sitting in there in the middle. This debate has been going on long before he was in office, and he thinks, let's have a common sense solution. It's like, no. When a problem gets to the level of the president of the United States sitting around a conference table with senators, it means it's something that just can't be solved with a quick quip off the top of his head. And that's what he doesn't seem to do.
And he was telling these Republican lawmakers, don't worry so much about the NRA. We can handle the NRA.
Why the heck do they listen to what he says? And why are we talking about this? Look, Barack Obama had a false birth certificate. Oh, sorry, that's not true. I'm going to tear up the Iran nuclear deal. Sorry, that's not true. I'm looking at issues like Chinese currency manipulation. We won't do anything about that. And my favorite, dumping on the Secretary of State for talking about conversations with the North Koreans, and then the Vice President goes to the South Korean Olympics and says, I'm happy to talk to North Koreans. The point is, he didn't do anything. He talked at a meeting today, and I don't understand why Republicans and Breitbart takes it seriously. He doesn't know what he says, and I suspect he's not going to do anything.
They take it seriously because he's the president of the United States.
I suppose, but what's he going to do?
Well, what was so amazing about watching all of this is that I think members of Congress have finally found a way to flatter the president enough so he will listen to them, because everybody started their little piece by saying, you know, Mr. President, I know you can exert the greatest leadership on this. And with your leadership, we can do X, Y, and Z. And the president sat there and nodded and listened. And I think they all understand after previous meetings that this is the way to get through to him.
And the president actually was walking and telling these lawmakers, you know what, you got to combine this legislation. You can't just have separate pieces of legislation. He was going through the legislative process to the delight of the Democrats there, the irritation of a few of those Republicans. Stick around. An emotional return to the class of survivors over at that Florida high school shooting as another major gun seller now changes its policies because of the attack.
Looking for a hotel that fits your budget? TripAdvisor now searches over 200 sites to find you the hotel you want at the lowest price. Grazie, Gino. Find a price that fits. TripAdvisor.
This is food made to sit down for.